A motion by Helmut.
Welcome to Minutes by Minute. I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kenny.
And we're here to talk about what goes on in the village, the township. You know those government people that make laws and regulations? That affect you out there.
That's right, Elgin. And whether you live in the village of Oxford, the village of Leonard, Addison Township, or Oxford Township, these are the people that you went and elected and may do so again in November. But you may not have attended that important meeting, and the result can be a taxing situation.
Very much so. And don't forget there's a primary to be held in August.
And
so that's
that's right. And the election in November.
In November, right. So anyway, you get an opportunity to voice your position as to who you'd like to have, filling those seats. Going to be I know a village council position that's going to be open. There's, I think, state senator that's going to be running in the November election, that kind of thing.
Well, remember, you can't complain about the results unless you vote.
Right. Now, what we do here also is there's humor. In case you don't show up at these meetings, as David indicates you should, there's humor that bubbles to the top or floats to the bottom, but it's there and we dig it out. Right?
And its distant cousin, rumor.
Rumor, yes. And the rumors are pretty much established by this guy over here, David.
And confirmed by.
Could be. All right. So pay attention closely, and we're going to discuss some of these meetings that sometimes take several hours. We'll wrap them up in roughly about 10 to 15 minutes.
This
right?
is the Reader's Digest version, folks.
This is it, yeah. Without the humor or the comics at the end of it.
I see.
That you get to look at. Okay. You may look at us throughout this thing and consider us as being the comics, hopefully. Okay. But anyway, so we do inject some humor in this as well. Okay, we're going to talk about two meetings that occurred. One is Leonard Village Council. The other one is the Oxford Village Council. What went on with the Leonard Village Council on July 9th, Mr. McDonald, who's Mike McDonald, serves as president. Shar Southerby serves as vice president. Paul Almirante is on that board, and Larry Hoffman also, but Larry was gone that particular day, and he was excused for health reasons. And Alexander Kennedy serves on the board as well. And along with them were the clerk, Cindy Groskoff, and also the treasurer, Judy Verse. I want to say that the first thing they did, of course, is the preliminaries, which they always do. They did the pledge. Of course, the prayer was provided by Southerby. And it's always good to have these prayers, before these meetings.
I think they all start with, oh, please.
Oh, please, yes. Help us out, yes. Anyway, so that occurred, and it's good. It's a nice thing to do. Anyway, the first thing that came up was the minutes for June 11th, and there was a correction to it, but it was approved and amended, and went to the next item, which was the agenda approval, which immediately was approved for the agenda for that evening. Treasurer's report was received and filed and approved.
Okay.
Look how quickly we're running through this one.
Was that a 5-minute meeting?
No.
No.
But we're going to get there to the
All
meat.
right.
The meat of the thing. Okay. Accounts payable was the next subject. And of course, there's several accounts
Yeah.
that they take funds from. One is a general fund, and that fund had, the account of $23,132.37 to be withdrawn. The major account was $2,224.07. And the local account was $89.10. Of course, there is also the mill and park account, which is zero, because nothing went on there. There's no money in there. And by the way, if you folks would like to help renovate the old mill over there in
That's
Leonard,
right on the Pollyann Trail.
Right. They're looking for funding. They're looking also for labor for folks that would like to pitch in and help.
Want to take a look at it? You just go to Leonard, go up Elmwood Street, and where the Pollyann Trail is, look to your right. Oh,
Yep.
There it is.
It's going to be a very unique building when it's completed.
Oh, yeah.
It's right off the trail, as you pointed out. So there's going to be, there's going to be a water fountain there, which has gone in, I think, at this point, along
Good.
the Pollyann Trail. And with that, they're going to also provide, I think, coffee, that kind of thing, donuts, a little shop there, possibly. So it's
That
got
will
a little,
work.
Yeah, it's got a ways to go because they had some foundation issues, which I understand have been resolved, but they still need funding to pursue this and move it further. Another thing that's going to be going on, of course, shortly is the Leonard Strawberry Festival. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, shall we?
Shall we?
All right. Public comment. Had a lot of comments going on. One was of Mr. Malaya, and he said there's a bunch of weeds, he says, in the alley. You need to clear those weeds. Good idea. He says,
Ah.
when you go to turn, coming out of the alley, he said, you can't see any traffic coming.
Was this the younger or the older Malia?
This is the older Malia,
Gino.
Gino. So, anyway, you know the guy.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, so he got his point taken. And the other thing that he mentioned was sidewalks. Did you know that our sidewalks need repaired? He said there's one hump where there's a little old lady I saw trying to get over with her wheel pusher thing.
You got to
And,
take a good run at it.
Well, she went 3 or 4 times trying to get up over it he said, before she came down the other side.
Hey, kids, give me a push.
Right. So anyway, it worked out. She made it over the other side. But he said, you know, something should be done about
Yeah.
that. And actually, this is a point where you, the village people and the residents, get to speak. But the people on the board, they just listen, supposedly.
Aren't they supposed to be doing a kind of a revamp of that area there?
They are. And the thing came up, actually, Mike McDonald said, you know, the sidewalks are an issue. There's a certain budget for the sidewalk. He said, not very much money in there, though. He said roughly $3,000 in that neighborhood. But he said in order to fix the sidewalks as they are required to do, he said, you're looking at roughly a little over $10,000 to do it. He said, and quite frankly, he said, the village really doesn't have the money at this point, but he said it is on the list, and when the money is available, he says, we'll make that happen. So,
But for specific items, specific areas that are, you know, obstructions, say, to people on those little wheelchair things, maybe they can address that more quickly than the
as you're
original
looking
plan.
at a safety issue, possibly.
Yeah.
Well, there are block grants, that kind of thing for that.
Sure.
And Mr. McDonald has already looked into those things.
Oh,
By the
good.
way, you're very fortunate out there in Leonard to have such an individual as president, you know, that board. Mike McDonald is very knowledgeable in a lot of areas, and he does pursue block grants, that kind of thing.
Good.
So, and of course, he runs a tight line on the budgets as well, and the expenditures. So that's a good thing, you know, for your community. You may not always agree, you know, with what this board does, but you got to understand that, you know, they're not necessarily paid for what they do in many cases. So, and Mr. McDonald and the people on this board do a lot of extra things for the village. So keep that in mind. You see them, say thanks. Don't pat them on the back too hard in case they have an injury.
Yeah, well,
But that would work.
they don't have an account for that.
I have an account for that, right. So next, a gentleman by the name of Mr. Bivens stood up, and he said that he has a letter received from the village that said that he needed a structural permit. And he said it's a portable unit that he put up. I believe it's probably a storage unit for a car, that kind of thing. And he said, so he has a question why he needs a permit for that, because he understood that that wasn't necessary. Well, Mr. McDonald said, well, what you need to do is come in and fill out a permit form on that. And he said, and they'll look at it and see if it's a requirement or not. But he said, if you received a letter, more than likely, you know, it doesn't
Conform.
conform to it, right, and it has to follow the ordinance. And so he said, you need to come into the office, we need to work out. There was some discussion back and forth on that. It came right down to the fact that the gentleman agreed to come in. Next thing we're going to talk about is chickens.
Chickens?
Yeah, because this same individual is complaining that his next door neighbor, who he thinks is his next door neighbor, is complaining to the state about his chickens that he has. And he said, and they've been out and inspected his chicken coops and where he's storing the chickens several times. And he said there's been no issue, so he'd like to resolve that once and for all.
And this is within the village limits.
I believe it is within the village limits, but they didn't express that at this point. But being the state is involved, could be. And we'll talk about more involvement when we get back right after this.
Catch us anytime on YouTube. Go to Oxford Community Television YouTube.
Welcome back to Minutes by Minute. I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kenny.
And we were talking about the Leonard Village Council that went on, and there's several people spoke at the open to the public. And Mr. Bradford was the third person that spoke, and he was concerned about the sanitary codes discussed for septic concerns for the village. As you know, the water table is quite high there.
Now, do they have a sewer system, or does everybody have a septic
No, everybody has a septic system.
in downtown?
Everywhere's in
Okay.
Leonard. And the point he said is that they need to have a municipal system, a regular sewage system.
Nope, there's another account.
Yep. Well, the problem, great. The problem is they don't have the funding to be able to do that. And he said, well, you weighed it out as far as an individual putting in a engineered system as opposed to doing, you know, the municipal system. And roughly, he said the municipal system would cost less to do it. But Mr. McDonald, he pointed out that that wasn't necessarily the case. And Shar Sotheby, she jumped in and she said, actually, the engineering system is the one that pretty much Addison Township has agreed would work along the lakes and that kind of thing, and has been approved. And so that issue then was kind of set aside, or
But even with an engineered
aside.
system, that only means that there's a holding tank and you're going to pump it out, but you have somewhere to pump it out to.
yes, you do. Yeah, and they're quite a very engineered feat, you know, to do that.
Yeah,
And
not cheap.
Not inexpensive, right? Not for the faint of heart, such as you. Okay, Mr. Hart. Speaking of hearts,
Oh.
was the fourth person that wanted to speak, and he also was concerned about weeds, and he talked about
kind?
that. Oh, the kind of weeds that grow willy-nilly.
Oh, okay, that kind of.
Willy-nilly weeds, you know, willy-nilly ones.
I
Okay.
see.
Also, he was concerned about getting NOTA rides. Now, this gentleman is a paraplegic, and apparently he's been before this board before, and he's concerned that he wants a ride on Mondays and Fridays, and NOTA can't endorse his being able to do this repetitively. And Mr. McDonald said that he recalls looking into the case before, and that he was in arrears. In other words, owed money to NOTA. That's the reason why they refused to give him rides for a period of time. And he said, well, I'm caught up in arrears now. And he said, but I still need to have these rides on Mondays and Fridays. And so the point, they carried on quite a discussion about this, but the point was that he needs to work with NOTA, and perhaps he needs to shuffle his schedule around somewhat to conform with what NOTA requirements are, that he's not the only individual out in the
Because
Leonard area.
they have to operate at a certain degree of efficiency.
They do, and they can't just drive out to Leonard and pick up one person, and you know, that's not the way it works unless it's an emergency situation.
But on the other hand, Leonard and Addison all pay into NOTA.
They do. The thing is, though, NOTA does a great job, you know, for Addison Township, Oxford Township, and Orion Township. Most people are very happy with the service. They've just put on new buses and new people to try to hit more areas, you know. And so what it came down to is this gentleman is not a resident of Leonard
But Addison Township.
and not of Addison, I don't believe either.
Oh, really?
Or he could be, but he's coming before the Leonard Board, which is the village of Leonard, which has nothing to do with the Addison Township Board. So
Right.
he's actually in the wrong place. Maybe
Oh.
in the right church, wrong pew. I don't know. But anyway, it was pointed out that he needs to go before the NOTA Board. He said, well, he was there 3 times, and he said they were closed one time because of weather and so forth, and he said he wasn't notified. And there's all kinds of excuses why he didn't go there. but-
if he comes from Addison Township, then he should contact them. And at least Addison has a representative on the NOTA board, and they could act as his advocate.
Well, actually, the NOTA Board is the place where he needs to be.
Right.
And he needs to go to one of those meetings. He needs to either get on the agenda or, and he can call for that. I mean, telephone isn't that far away.
Sure.
And he needs to get this resolved through the NOTA Board. They're the people that will make decisions for him. Just so you folks have any other issues with the NOTA Board or the NOTA organization, call the board. And it's listed. So, new business, master plan. They've developed a new master plan through the Planning Commission, and is just under review for the village council. And it was set aside, you know, for that review, and hopefully an approval will be given at the next meeting that they have.
Okay.
So, tree removal was the next thing that came up on Division Road and Elmwood Street. There's some dead trees. Oh, how did they get dead? I don't know. They just, you know, keeled over, got tired of
Gave it up.
breathing oxygen or carbon dioxide, and ejecting oxygen. Anyway, they're not doing their job anymore, so they're going to work out an arrangement where they cut these, and they need 3 bids in order to do it. And so it was given authority to the village manager or not the village manager, but the president of the board to contact for 3 bids, tree cutters,
Okay.
and bring it to the next meeting.
That
Then-
shouldn't be a big deal.
Unfinished business, weight basin and some repairs required on the waste basin, water, and as well as some street repairs required. They discussed that briefly and set it aside because it's part of what they're going to do for Elm Street. The other thing is old business. John Irwin, who is their DPW person over there in Leonard, has taken on a full-time job elsewhere, but said that he would still like to do work for the village. So they said they'll have to work around his schedule to do that. They all agreed that they wanted to keep him. The lawnmower that they use, a brand new one, they had some issues with it, but it's back, and it's in operation, and it's running like a brand new lawnmower.
Ah, wonderful.
that? Okay.
Wonderful.
Then, let me see, village election. You want to remind you in November, it's coming up. There's 2 trustee openings for the village of Leonard. And also want to point out that the NOHAS program for July 28th at 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. at 5290 Maybe Road. And the fee for that is $10 fee. If you need more information, contact the village. Okay? So that covers the Leonard Village Council.
Wonderful.
Now, we're going to talk about the Oxford Village Council. Sue Bassardet serves on that board as president. Eric Dolan serves as the vice president. Dave Bailey is on that board. Maureen Helmuth and Joel Frost. Now, Joe Madure, who was the village manager, he was present, as well as Terry Onika, who's the new clerk treasurer that
Oh.
they just hired. And she was doing the recording that evening of July 10th.
She used to head up Groveland Township, didn't she?
No, she was supervisor. I'm trying to think of the name of the.
Springfield? No.
It's a township in Genesee County.
Oh, in Genesee.
Right.
Okay.
And Drew Benson, of course, is what I would call the assistant village manager, although I don't know what his true title is because he's pretty knowledgeable about different things that go on within the village and putting together various projects. He's also on the, he's involved with the web page that they're going
Right.
to develop. He's kind of pretty much heading up that.
Well, you're on that committee too, aren't you?
I am on that committee. And we have a committee meeting coming up, as a matter of fact, next week, Monday.
All right.
Bob Davis, the attorney, he was there as usual, and they don't move far without the attorney. He's a pretty good attorney. And with that, we're going to move a little bit distance here, and then we'll be back right after
Okay.
this.
I'm going to get a drink of water.
Welcome back to Minutes by Minute. I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kenny.
And now we're talking about the Oxford Village Council. We did an introduction of those on the board. First thing they did, of course, is a Pledge of Allegiance. And then they had a moment of silence for our military and for those that are deceased within the village and township. Agenda was approved by Eric Dolan. However, it was moved, he moved the code enforcement to another position on the agenda. With that, they traveled on to the next subject, which is the public non-agenda items. Nope, nobody
Nope.
wanted to
Nope.
speak. They had a number of people there, too.
Oh, but they were checking their shoes.
They were checking their shoes and the ceiling. I see them looking at the ceiling from time to time. But anyway, that would be the public. Consent agenda, minutes, which include the minutes for July 26, 2018. Bills for, get this, $449,806.99. Get your checkbook out.
That's not small change.
Not small, ka-ching. Budget amendment, nothing on the budget amendment, and that all included the consent agenda, and it was received and filed and approved. Now, the next thing was the presentation. No presentations. This would be the
Oh.
first. Also,
A
unfinished.
presentation.
Yeah, you were somebody's going to make a presentation to the
They
board.
didn't show up.
No, there wasn't any. Nobody wanted to talk. Nobody wanted to come, say, give me
so,
this.
so it's an open item on the agenda then.
Yeah, it would be on the agenda and it's open. You're right.
Okay.
And now it's closed. Okay.
Shut the barn door.
Shut the barn door. Okay. Shut my mouth. Okay. Unfinished business. None. How about that? No unfinished business, folks.
I should have said finished.
Public hearings. None. No public hearings either.
Wow.
Wow, yeah, it's a slow summer day.
Well, I have a feeling you've got an ace in the hole there.
Well, it's coming, but anyway, unfinished old business. None.
Well, wait a minute.
Unfinished old business.
Well, but you just said unfinished business. What's the difference?
There's old business, unfinished business, new business, and there's unfinished old business, according to them.
You're kidding.
No, I was kidding. I wouldn't have said it. But anyway, that's the way it goes.
Oh, boy.
Okay, so let's get into a really good one called new business.
Oh,
Okay, we have some new business coming up.
or is it just new business?
No, under consideration, they have a resolution to place village-owned property, parcel of property located on Dayton Street that the village owns, on the November 2018 ballot. Now, Eric Dolan was ready to say, let's make a motion to go ahead and approve and put it on the ballot, when all of a sudden Sue Visarda said, hold it, wait a minute, hold it. There's information you need to know.
Is this the property that goes into the cemetery?
No,
Oh, okay.
no, this is a different property. This is on Dayton Street. But
Right.
that's not the property, I don't believe.
Right.
Although we could spread a rumor and say it was. But that, I don't think it is.
Oh, you're just trying to confuse me now.
Okay, did I do my job?
You certainly did.
All right, let's move on then. Sue Visarda did some research on this. Good for her. She found out that the property was originally owned by American Aggregates, who donated the land for senior housing to be built. Senior Housing, which is an organization, a development company, built at a different location, so they didn't require this property any longer, so they donated the property to the village. That's how the village got it. Now the question comes about that if senior housing was the criteria for how this property was donated originally, is there something on the deed that implicates that as a fact, and that it can't be sold for anything other than for senior housing?
But Dayton-
that's what came up as a discussion.
There was an issue years ago because Dayton currently terminates where Boulder Point picks up,
Right.
and there was a request to continue it into Boulder Point, but they got denied.
It got denied. Right.
So is that property in that
And the
area?
reason, yeah, and the reason why it got denied back in those days, from my understanding, is that all the residents that had new homes on that site didn't want through traffic
Right.
right through. Am I right?
Yep.
Okay.
Certainly are.
Okay. So anyway, so after all the smoke had cleared, Mr. Dolan says, well, it's not really required, if it is on the ballot, to be able to sell it. And if there's something on the deed that says we can't sell it for anything other than for senior housing, then he said that's what will come down on the requirement. And otherwise, he said we need to get this thing moving. Otherwise, it's going to be another 2 years before we can do anything with the property. So he's right in that sense. Just because you folks vote for it out there to sell the property doesn't mean that they can do that or they're willing to do that at all. Well, the question came up by Joe Frost is how long, if it's approved, will this be allowed to be sold? And the attorney said, forever. Once it's voted by the people to go ahead and sell it, he said you can sell it whenever you want, or you don't need to sell it whenever you
The
want.
light turns green and stays green.
Stays green if you folks vote for it. So anyways, property that the village really doesn't want to hang on to. They don't want to be in the property village or in the property business. At one time they thought they did, so at least the people who sat on the board did. And so a lot of properties were purchased at that time. This one here kind of came down through trickle economics.
Yeah, well, I remember a couple of instances there where it wasn't a great deal in real estate wise.
That's right. So yeah, we can name a few of them. But anyway, let's go on. Lone Ranger Festival is the next subject that came up, and all items were addressed as far as a permit is required. So there were a few items, and one of the items that came up was insurance. That's not settled yet, and because the DDA is involved with it and the Cole sponsorship for some of the payments of this, actually DDA approved $800 insurance for this. Rod Charles was present. He spoke. And he said it was approved, and they said, well, if that's the case, they just need a copy of it, and everything should be all kosher. So that's where they are on that.
Okay.
Lone Ranger Parade, Hi-Yo Silver,
Away.
away. And good job on Rod Charles and his what he calls a posse, which is his team that put all this together. Special event, let me see, Magic in the Park was the other thing that they need a permit for to approval of the permit.
What's Magic in the Park?
Well, Nicole from 5-1 Diner has put it together a magic show.
Ah,
And it's going to be on Saturday, August 28th.
in the gazebo?
August 28th in the gazebo. And after all was said and done, it was approved with insurance review. In other words, if she's insured for it, it'll be no problem. You folks will see it come and disappear. Actually, she asked for a police officer that could disappear if he would show up.
Oh, well.
So anyway, we'll see how that one works. But it should be very interesting. You want to catch that. That's on August 28th. There'll be more information coming forward, and if you want to know more, check with 5-1 Diner on Washington Street. Eric Dolan said ordinance activity for 200 Oxford Lake Drive was a consideration or concern that he had. He said there's a home there that has torn off the back porch.
Don't you live there?
Yeah, I do, down the street. That wouldn't be my home.
Oh, just
And,
wondering, you know.
Yeah, he said they had a deck, and he said they ripped off the deck and they put it on the side of the building. He says it's been there since Moses. He would like to see something happen to that, and so the village manager said there would be an ordinance officer that will cite the property owner, in which case actions will be taken at that point. So be careful.
Names will be taken.
You guy that, the people that live at 200 Oxford Lake Drive, I advise you move that pile. Get rid of it. Have a campfire or something. Okay, village manager report. Circulation request from the leader. It's something that's required from a state level, and the leader is going to provide him with those statistical information. Volunteer doing leader for the blind has also been appointed by the village as an individual that can promote it. And let me see, reviewing with engineers for the roads, also working with that.
This for MDOT?
This is with MDOT and also local, because
Okay.
the village is responsible for certain roads. Demolition of Washington Street, court ordered to remove it. There's a demolition home that needs to be wiped out. The court has ordered it be removed, and the village is kind of overseeing that, keeping an eye on it. Light pole damage. Somebody ran into a light pole, and guess what a light pole cost?
What?
$5,000.
Yikes!
So anyway, it's being turned over to the individual's insurance, and we're going to see what can be worked out there. LED program, all the lights are going to be changed to LEDs. More
They are
economical.
LEDs, aren't they?
No, not all of them.
How about the ones that are?
Main Street?
Are they going to change them over to the new LEDs?
No,
No, okay.
he'll keep those, and the ones that require changeover will be changed over. What's
Okay.
coming up?
Well, we've got a few meetings. On 7/24 at 6:30, the Village of Oxford Council will be meeting again. And at 6:30 on that same day, the Oxford School Board will be meeting at the board offices in downtown Oxford. And on 7/26 at 7 o'clock, the Oxford Township Planning Commission. And that's all.
That's it. Okay. I do want to mention that starting next week, we're going to have a roving reporter. Her name is Rachel Baker, and she's going to be out there asking questions about your local government and what you know and what you don't know. I'm
That's
Elgin
right.
Nichols.
Don't run.
I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kenny.
Catch you next time right here on Minutes by Minute.
See you then.